Yo, what is going on, you guys? Bashtianygo here, and today I'm coming at you with the tier list for the next best decks post-September 2023 ban list. Now, we just got the ban list. It's coming into effect on the 25th of September, guys. It's coming up very soon, so we need to go ahead and stay prepared and stay ahead of the metagame to make sure that we are fully understanding what to prepare for in the future, what we can go ahead and disregard is in the past now, which is really not that big of a change essentially, but there are some key hits that are essentially putting decks that were not really in the picture and have become very meta relevant because of the banning of a Rise Heart. Also, with a few other changes in the ban list, it really wasn't a big ban list, as I'm sure a lot of us were predicting. We were predicting for a lot of things to come off the ban list, a lot of things to go on, Eradicator to get banned, whatever it might be. Eradicator really saw a huge dip in play the second that we saw it pretty much dominate Cashier for like 2-3 weeks, and we saw it in everyone's side deck and everyone, but it really didn't really, I don't want it to become an Eradicator video. That's a different video altogether. But today, guys, we're going to be checking out the top best decks, as well as the rest of the decks that I believe are going to be impacted by this Forbidden Limited list. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, guys, so we're here with our Forbidden Limited list. Now, there's a lot of decks that were completely unchecked in this most recent list. One of the decks that stands out the most, I would say, essentially, is going to be the Unchained strategy, which we can all agree is a top tier strategy. The consistency of this deck is through the roof. The fact that it just constantly pops everything on the field, pops itself, it makes it very difficult for a lot of decks playing in the current format to deal with, especially the deck that I've been playing the most, Branded Chimera. It's very tough strategy, probably the worst matchup it could possibly have, just because everything is so destruction based. With a Rise Heart leaving the format, it really makes it difficult, as well as Bashtian as well, to go ahead and counter the deck. Bashtian Macamil was ready to go ahead and get rid of the cards and banish them from the graveyard, as well as the Rise Heart getting rid of their graveyard. Didn't stop their effects from going off, but it took away a lot of the recursion that the deck had. So that is something that we got to keep in mind, is that essentially what every single format has to do, what you have to do in order to prepare for it, is to make sure that your deck can find a way to beat the best deck in the format, which at this point is going to be Unchained without a doubt. So what are cards that are going to be essentially coming up into the format? I see Triple Static Thrust coming a lot more into the format as far as viability. We see in the market as well, prices for this card is going through the roof to go ahead and get cards that would completely beat this deck, essentially right from our deck into our hands. Cards like Regeki clear their board, Darkhold clear their board, Dark Ruler no more, and negate all their effects. These types of cards as well, just be able to go ahead and get rid of their board before you do anything, because the second you put a monster on the field, it's going to get linked off and they're going to go ahead and take advantage of it. So you really want to make sure any type of not evenly matched, try to not destroy their monsters. I don't Regeki Darkhold destroy monsters, but any way that you can go ahead and get to get rid of these cards, non-destruction is really going to be what is most effective. I potentially see, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe like a Tri-Brigade comes into the format, but we're going to talk about that in a separate video. So we got Unchained number 1, we got Labyrinth completely untouched again, top tier as well. Now, the only reason why this may not see a big viability is just because it's the start of a new season for Yu-Gi-Oh! There's not as much of a need to play as competitively right now as there would be a little bit further down the line as we get closer to Nationals and Worlds next year. So what I'm trying to get at is with Labyrinth is that it's not a very exciting deck for a lot of players to pick up. Me personally, I haven't played a back row heavy deck in a while, so it's something that I'm interested in learning how to play as well. But as far as for just the amount of time it's been in the format, it's not the most, like I said, exciting deck in the world to play, so it may not see as much representation, but it's definitely a deck that you should prepare for if you're going to be going to any regionals or YCSS here in the near future. Next up, we have Branded Chimera, and for the exact reason that I just mentioned, it's still a top tier deck, don't get me wrong. Branded Chimera did not see any hits, as well as Branded, which Branded is going to be a top tier deck, and the main difference between these two is that Branded Chimera is a lot more reliant on popping cards on the field with Guardian Chimera and having negations in the graveyard as long as you have the mythical beast on board, which is cool and everything, but Unchained just gets rid of all that. So that's the really only reason why Branded Chimera will be at a 1.5. I'm teetering on tier 2 strategies just because of the representation of Unchained, I believe, in this upcoming format is going to be through the roof. So that's something that we have to look forward to as well. Next, of course, Branded. It's a deck that is never going to really get hit, I believe, in TCG. I never saw it to be as much of an issue, but you know, now that we know that the Banlist is not going to hit it, I know that a lot more Branded players are going to go into the format. Branded is still a very, very strong deck, guys. I don't know why it doesn't get the representation that it does. I believe it may be the same thing as Labyrinth, but it still has the potential to be a top tier deck, guys, so definitely don't sleep on your Branded. Next, we got Dragon Link, which was the deck that got absolutely slaughtered the most from the ban list, which I guess understandably so. That Konami wants to make sure that the Worlds deck gets the backhand to it. So what I see with Dragon Link is it still has potential to be a decent deck. Don't get me wrong. I think it's gonna take a really good pilot. So these two strategies right here. Okay, tier 2 is basically Rogue almost. Takes a really good pilot is a deck that, even though it is at a much weaker state, with a really good pilot, it could potentially still be tier 1.5 to a top tier strategy with Dragon Link. And the consistency, of course, has dropped quite a bit, and the lines are going to have to be a difference, but it's definitely not and wasn't meant to be strategies. It is definitely still potentially viable. We will see here in the upcoming next few days and weeks what happens in these upcoming regionals and YCSs. I believe that we're gonna have a YCS like the same week that the ban list takes place, so we'll see what happens with that one, and then we can go ahead and see what the actual format is going to be like. But for right now, I'm gonna go ahead and say it takes a really good pilot for Dragon Link, and we'll take it from there. A strategy that I very much am excited about is going to be Sky Striker. Sky Striker, the biggest issue with it was Bestials and the Rise Heart. This deck could not play at all against any type of Bestials because you banish the Ray, and against the Rise Heart, everything just gets banished instead. So I think it has the potential to be a tier 2 deck. Even with a good pilot, I just don't think it could come up any higher than that. Unfortunately, don't get me wrong, it's still gonna get its tops. I believe Sky Striker actually just top 16 a regional not too long ago, or a YCS if I'm not mistaken. So definitely a deck to keep your eye out for as well. Again, Thrust is coming back into the format, which means we're playing 5 copies of Engage, and we can potentially see this deck play a lot of different strategies as well. I could see it also using Thrust to search out Change of Heart to take your opponent's card. I'm focusing a lot on Unchained as well, just because it is the deck that we are going to have to compare everything to, right? Back when Cashier format, I had to compare everything to Cashier. Back when it was Tierlist format, I had to compare everything to Tierlist, and so on and so forth as well, just so you guys get a little bit more of an understanding of my thought process as well. Next, guys, we have Marincess. Marincess is still a tier 2 strategy to tier 1.5. I put it at tier 2 for right now just because the deck is absolutely ridiculous, but I feel like it relies way too much on going first. And don't get me wrong, it can play a lot of going second board breaking cards, but for the most part, I believe Marincess is definitely going to be a going first strategy, and we'll go ahead and see if anything happens after that, but this is what we're going to leave it for right now. Next, we have Heroes. Heroes it's a deck that will top every now and then. Definitely the hit to the Bestials and the hit to the Ariser helps it out. I don't think it's still meant to be, even with a really good pilot. Even with a really good pilot, don't get me wrong, you can still top a regional. I'm not doubting the fact that Hero can and potentially will do that as well, but I just don't see it doing that on a consistent basis and multiple, in a multiple competitive setting. So we'll go ahead and leave it right there for right now. Next, I have Rescue Ace. Rescue Ace is immediately a tier 1.5 deck. Just being able to, set 4 cards that all interact with your opponent. It's similar to Kashtira. Hear me out. It's similar to Kashtira in the way that none of the monsters effect activate on summon, so you have to make sure that you're playing around cards like Infinite Impermanence, playing around Veiler, playing around a lot of those cards, Ghost Mourner as well, maybe cards like Crossout Designator may become a lot more influential in the format. We've seen that card make a little bit of a resurgence here and there most recently, so we may see that pick up even more to counter cards like Nibiru, like I said, Ash, Imperm, Veiler. I think it's going to be a very, very hand trap heavy format, but we'll see. We'll see what the actual format says. I just believe it's going to go a more hand trap heavy route rather than board breaker, but like I said, we will see, except for, of course, decks that thrive with board breakers. Next, we have the previous best deck before Kashtira. We have Tierlist. Tierlist is immediately gone up to a top tier deck. Congratulations, Tierlist players. Your patience has rewarded you mightily, I would say. Tierlist with the banning of a Rise Heart, which was the biggest issue, just not being able to have a graveyard, and the hit to the Bestials. And again, these are the two biggest hits of the format. I think Tierlist has immediately going up to be a top tier strategy, even with everything at 1. It doesn't really affect it too much in the OCG with everything at 1, and we've seen Tierlist top quite significantly here in the regionals and YCS, even with a Rise Heart still being prevalent in the format but not being played nearly as much. Now that we know it's no longer in the format, I think Tierlist players are going to come out of their hole and come back in and start wreaking havoc all over the format again. So we will see what comes of that. Next we have Kashtira. So the big bad that used to be a tier 0 strategy, Kashtira, honestly, so the thing with Kashtira, and I'm going to go ahead and put it at a tier 1.5 deck, a Rise Heart getting banned does a lot more to the deck than just not having a walking Macrocosmos that can banish every turn. It gives a lot away to the recursion that the deck had, because you could easily go ahead and stack your own materials under this or your resources under this and banish them like Yosis or Big Bang, whatever it might be, and still gain additional effects over and over and over again. There's so many different ways you can go ahead and go about this, so honestly it's losing not just the big bad, the boss monster, but it's also losing access to the additional resources that it would gain from having the additional Rise Heart banishes, and also messing with your opponent's graveyard. Now, having said that, there are still alternative ways you can still play this deck. For example, the Raid Raptor engine is still very, very viable. You don't end on a Rise Heart anymore, you end on an F0 and a I don't know, like a Gallant Granite Search Nibiru, or you can end on like a Abyss Dweller, which hurts Tierlist, which hurts Unchained as well. So that is still really, really big. Don't get me wrong, it still has a lot of potential. I think Kashtira or the Adventure engines, Adventure Kashtira is still very, very viable as well. But honestly, I don't think this deck is completely dead by any means whatsoever. I think the deck can still find a way to go ahead and compete in the current format. I just think that because it doesn't have that boss monster, definitely not going to be top tier anymore, but I could definitely still see it wreaking havoc across the tier 1.5 to tier 2 strategies. Next up, guys, we have Pirelli. We're finally able to play Pirelli without having to fear the ban list, guys. Pirelli has been known to be one of the best decks of the format. It was supposed to be much, much better, but for some reason they slapped Delicious Memory and limited it before the deck really got any chance to go ahead and use the ability to play as consistently as possible. But with the Sleepy Nor and the Big Nor as well, I mean, the deck is just so consistent, so good at what it does. I think it's going to be the same as Branded or Labyrinth, where it may not see as much representation just because it's been around for a little bit. It's not really as exciting to play anymore. Whereas Tierlist used to be really good, and now it's and then it died, and now it's really good again. So it may see a lot more resurgence. It's really gauging the excitement of individuals as we see progression through the format. So that's what I believe is going to happen. But anyway, Pirelli's still a top tier deck. Don't mess around with that. Vanquishal, it takes a really good pilot. Let me tell you why. Vanquishal can be a really good deck in the hands of the right user. I do not see it top enough in competitive play to put it at a 1.5 or tier 2 strategy, but in the right hands, I really believe that Vanquishal can be really good. We're also going to be getting brand new support for Vanquishal, I believe in Age of Overlord, which comes out in October. So for you Vanquishal players, this is going to go up in viability, playability, competitiveness in the next few months, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. If you guys have not picked up your Vanquishal cores already, I would highly recommend you start picking them up now before they start shooting up in price once that new support comes out. Just gonna go ahead and put a warning out there for you. Vanadium. I'm gonna go ahead and put this at a tier 2 strategy. I don't think it's tier 1.5 just yet. I do think it's still susceptible to a few things. It's still fragile in certain parts of the combo, so I'll just go ahead and leave it right now. Don't get me wrong, Vanadium, it can be a very scary deck to go ahead and play against. It can put up a lot of really scary boss monsters as well, especially Chaos Angel was a pain in its own to deal with, but Vanadium is still a really good deck. I would still put it at a tier 2 strategy. I'm putting it at the top of tier 2, teetering on tier 1.5. But I would still go ahead and put these other decks above it, just out of current, out of the current status of the format. But it did still get a boost because, a Rise Heart not being in the format, things like that. A deck that I am very excited about, honestly, is going to be Drytron. Drytron, I think, is going to be a tier 1.5 deck. So Drytron format was absolutely ridiculous. Summoning out Herald of Ultimateness or Perfection, whichever one is the one, just you have a whole bunch of fairies in your hand, just negate whatever your opponent does and you go blow them out from there. I think that Drytron has the ability to go ahead and become that raging monster once again. Bestials took a hit. You got Herald of Orange Light at 3. You don't have to deal with a Rise Heart anymore. Drytron, if this is your time is right now to go ahead and come and prove that you are one of the best decks of the format. I'm going to go ahead and put it at tier 1.5. I'm going to go ahead and not only do that, I'm going to put it at the top of tier 1.5. Potentially a top tier deck. We will see what happens. I'm very excited for what this deck can actually do. Don't get me wrong, still loses to Droll, still loses potentially to Nibiru. But because we have Herald of the Orange Knight at 3, we can go ahead and deal with these things a lot more effectively. They're all searchable. You can search your hand traps. You can go ahead and, the deck is all gas. There's so many ways to go ahead and play this deck. You can play the Megalith version, the Turn Skip version, the Ultimate Perfection version. You can play the Vanities Ruler version, whatever it might be. You have multiple ways to go ahead and just dunk on your opponent. So no matter what route you want to go ahead and take, I think Drytron's definitely going to be one of the best decks of the format. You don't have to worry about Bestials, and you know what? I'm done. I'm not talking about Drytron. I think it's going to be a really good deck this format. Next, we have Salamangreat going to 3 with Gazelle. Okay, I'm thinking long and hard about this one. I want to put this at a top tier 2 deck. I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for this one. This deck is extremely consistent. The new link searches you whatever you want from your deck, which is crazy. Salamangreat Fire is arguably one of the best starters the deck could have ever asked for, and now you got Gazelle at 3, making the deck even more consistent than it was before. I think Salamangreat has a bit to prove before I can put it any higher. A little hypocritical what I just said with Drytron, but Drytron has been proven to be a tier 0 deck, okay? Salamangreat is just a very consistent deck that I believe with, see, that's something that for some reason I'm very hesitant to put Salamangreat any higher, because it's a very consistent deck, it's a very good deck, don't get me wrong, but I just don't fear it as a top tier strategy. For example, when I see someone playing Unchained, it immediately inflicts fear into my heart. Whenever I hear someone say activate Alpha Drytron, it puts fear into my heart. Salamangreat, it doesn't put fear, it puts a sense of, okay, I need to be on top of my game. So putting it at top of tier 2, I think is fair for now. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. We'll call it as is, but I just want to go ahead and put that there for right now. Next up, we have Dark Worlds. Dark Worlds is definitely now a top tier 1.5 deck. I'm not going to put it top tier yet. I'm going to put it tier 1.5. Honestly, Dark Lords still lose to cards like Drone and Lockbird, as a few of these other decks do, don't get me wrong. But Dark Worlds has an insane loops. I'm going to put it right below, because in the event that this faces tier limit, Dark Worlds will immediately lose, in my personal opinion, just because you're discarding from yourself and you're making your opponent discard, which means you're discarding cards that activate in the graveyard, and then if you do that with tier limit, you just lose. So that is something to keep in mind moving forward, but I think Dark Lords has the potential to be a top tier deck in the format. Next up, guys, let's see what we're going to talk about next. I think Runix, and we'll go ahead and put Runix and Sprite here together, which I think is one of those decks that definitely suffered, especially Runic from a Rise Heart being in the format. Don't get me wrong, we still have D-Shifter to deal with, so decks like Fluwandereeze can still be considered top tier decks as well, which I'm going to go ahead and put it in tier 1.5. I think Fluwandereeze is still a nutty deck. that it just doesn't get any respect because all Flu players are. The hate for Fluandre's players or Fluandre's as a deck in the format and in the community is really funny. But let's be real, guys. Fluandre's is a very good deck. If you normal summon Robina and you don't have Valor or Imperm in your hand, you're losing that game. It's very hard to go ahead and get around Fluandre's, which do just very minor things, but they do it so well, and they tribute off all your cards, which they don't destroy. It's inconvenient. So I'm gonna go ahead and put Fluandre's at tier 1.5 deck. But Runic and Sprite, I think, took a huge boost in viability. We didn't get Sprite Elf back to 1, like I was thinking might be able to happen to push the viability of Sprite just a little bit more, but then it would have been a top tier deck undoubtedly. The second Sprite Elf comes off the list. But Runic, you have Runic's Fur Hire, you have Runic Sprites, Runic Chimera, which is something I'm testing out with right now. There's so many ways to go ahead and play this deck. I think it's just really good, and the fact that you actually have a graveyard now just boosts up in viability altogether. Next up, guys, we have Sword Soul. Sword Soul is still a tier 1.5 deck. It has been completely untouched by the ban list. You know what? Actually, I might take this one back. I'm gonna go ahead and put it towards the top of tier 2. I would still play all these decks above Sword Soul. It's still a really good deck, completely free to do whatever it wants. I don't think it's ever really been hit even by the balance except for Archnemesis Protos. But we all understand why that card is gone. That card is stupid. You know what? No. I changed my mind once again. It takes a really good pilot, and this deck is immediate top tier status. I think that Sword Soul by itself to the average player is great to learn. It's very easy to learn, hard to master style deck. Hard to master is key though. If you master this deck, if you're a master of Sword Soul, you know the lines, you see the lines, this is easily a top tier deck. Same thing with Vanquish Soul, same thing with Dragon Link. I just think it is definitely a scary deck in the right hands, but it's not a deck that will immediately strike fear. Again, we're gonna go ahead and go back to that, strike fear into your opponent unless you are a true master of Sword Soul. So something to keep in mind right here in the noggin. Gold Pride, I'm actually gonna go ahead and put at tier 2. I've only seen like 1 or 2 people who are actually really crazy with Gold Pride, but I mean besides that, it's not good enough to put in. It takes a really good pilot. I would 100% take Sword Soul over Gold Pride any day, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it at towards the bottom of tier 2. It could still win a lot of games. Actually, I couldn't beat it when I was playing Kashtira. But beside the point. I'm gonna still. I don't think it's done enough to put it anywhere higher than that. Grand Maju slapped that and wasn't meant to be. It's not meant to be. I don't know why it's in there. One deck that I am very excited about is Pendulums. So Pendulums, I believe, have a lot to prove. I believe it takes a really good pilot to properly play Pendulums. And now that we won't be seeing as much zone blocking, because the second you get your Pendulum zone blocked while playing Pendulums, you can't do literally anything and you just lose. But now that Kashtira will see a lot lesser play and viability, maybe a little bit less zone blocking as well, we will see what it takes. But I think it takes a really good pilot to go ahead and properly play any Pendulum deck. And for Noble, I am going to put towards the bottom of tier 1.5. I think the support it got is really good. Don't believe that it has gotten the representation that I thought it would. You know what? I think this deck actually does belong and takes a really good pilot as well. And it's funny, and there's a big difference between takes a really good pilot in tier 1.5, 1.2, and 2.0 and things like that. And Infernoble in the right hands can be a really scary deck, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it right here for right now. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and leave it there. Next we have Exo Sisters, not meant to be, for a better experience. If you want to play a trap deck or whatever Exo Sisters are, just play literally any other deck. Fluandre's or Labyrinth are a lot better, and take it from there. Rika Sun Avalon is definitely going ahead and be towards the top of the tier 1.5 strategy, tier 1.5 strategies, I should say. So Rika is completely untouched on the ban list. The deck I don't think is ever really going to receive a hit. I don't think it's consistently topping as well as it should. I think it actually should belong in the very top of Takes a Really Good Pilot, because no one really knows what this deck really does. You just know that you lose to it if you see someone playing it across from you. So I put it towards the top. It Takes a Really Good Pilot, and that I'm gonna go ahead and leave it for the tier list for post September 25, 2023, guys. Overall, I think we have a lot to look forward to. We do still have a deck that I omitted from this. We do have the Crimson King structure deck coming out here in the next few days, so maybe that will shake things up in the format. We will again have to wait and see, guys. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. If you guys agree or disagree, let me know. You can also let me know by smashing the like button and subscribing for more, guys. I have a lot more deck profiles coming up of decks that were affected. If you guys have any specific deck profiles that you guys want to see, combo videos, anything like that, let me know in the comment section down below and I'll get it out to you guys. We just uploaded Drytron yesterday and we will continue uploading deck profiles throughout the next week, just so you guys understand or get a good template as to what the decks are going to be looking like moving forward. Anyway, guys, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.